moving, moving, moving between the worlds. Moving, moving, moving between the worlds. She brings forth all things from within her body. She brings forth all things from within her body. Moving, moving, moving between the worlds. Moving, moving, moving between the worlds. He brings forth all things from within his body. He brings forth all things from within his body. Moving, moving, moving between the worlds. Moving, moving, moving between the worlds. We bring forth all things from within our bodies. We bring forth all things from within our bodies. Cha! Welcome. Today, we are going to explore women's spirituality then and now, moving between the worlds. This exploration is going to invite us to move between worlds of my family of origin here in the Rogue Valley, the worlds of the dominant patriarchal culture of the United States, the world of matriarchal cultures, both then and now, and the world of embodied spirituality. So get ready for the journey, and here we go. The seeds of my passion and interest in women's spirituality were planted on a small 6-acre farm outside of Grants Pass, about 3 miles from Murphy, Oregon, where I grew up, the oldest of 8 siblings. My father worked in the lumber mills. My mother was a mother who worked at home and always also was bringing in other sources of income. What I learned from my parents was that there was a relationship between the earth, my body, the food that I ate, and the way that I thought. It was a very holistic approach to life. And my mother and father basically saw their roles as equal. So I didn't experience like a dominant parent, which was seeds that got me interested in Ukrainian culture later on. I also was raised in the Roman Catholic faith. And the seeds that were planted in me from that was an interest in ritual and the power of ritual to provide a portal into other levels of reality. One of the other things that was planted in me from my Roman Catholic tradition was a sense of shame about my body. That as a woman's body, if I was to be seen in a positive life, I should be either in the convent where I wasn't exercising my sexuality, or be married and have my own children. So those messages and those seeds gave birth to what I'm going to talk about today, which is women's spirituality and its impact in the world, in our global community. Also, the arts were highly valued in my home. We bartered food, we bartered meat for violin lessons. So I learned to play the violin, I learned to dance, and all of those things also showed me that the arts were a way that I could be more alive and I could heal some of the sense of poor self-esteem that I had as a child. So at the center of women's spirituality is woman's body, and at the center of patriarchy is also woman's body, but the attitudes from both of those social paradigms are very different. So I'd like to share with you a little bit about my body's story. When I was born with knock knees and I was pigeon-toed. So the first steps that I took, I literally fell flat on my face. And so my mother cried, not out of the sheer joy of seeing her firstborn child take her steps, but because she felt the pain that I couldn't really walk properly. So she did what she could do, which was drove up to Portland. This was before freeways, and she got me fitted for corrective shoes. I hated them. They made me I felt deformed. I called them my ugly brown shoes. And so I internalized this sense that there was something wrong with my body. There was something wrong with me. So as I got older, my mother enrolled me in dance classes. And when I was dancing and moving, then I felt very alive. I felt like my body was whole. I wasn't aware of feeling deformed. So that planted a seed in me as well as, how did that happen? Why was it that when I was dancing and moving, I felt that way? So that led me to my work, my doctoral research that was on free-form movement works, intrinsic movement forms, and also into a study about patriarchal culture and societies as well as pre-patriarchal cultures. So that's what I'd like to explore next, is what is the attitude and the perspective on woman's body in patriarchy? So we live in a time now where patriarchy is the predominant paradigm in the United States and around the world. It's existed for, some scholars say, about 6,000 years, which I have to remind myself is really only a small blip of time when you consider that we've been around here as humans for hundreds of thousands of years. So we're going to look at the makeup of patriarchy. It has certain characteristics. Patriarchy is hierarchical, so there's something on the top and there's something on the bottom. It's also dualistic, so there are things on one side, there's things on the other side, and the things that are on one side are deified, the other things are demonized. So we'll look at something that I call the patriarchal split. And on one side of that patriarchal split, you'll see that there's associations of God and good, life, heaven, light, the sacred soul, mind, intellect, man, meaning the gender man, strong, anger, and hard. On the other side, the things that are associated together are the devil and evil and death and the earth, which is understood to be a kind of hellish place, the dark, secular, matter, body, emotion, and woman, weakness, tears, and soft. And right down the middle of those two categories is the line of taboo. Whether you're a man or whether you're a woman in patriarchy, you don't get to be whole. You don't get to have what the other side has unless you're willing to travel across the line of taboo. And to be a whole person, whether you're a man or a woman, we need access to all that is within that paradigm. So what has to happen is that if I choose as a woman to cross that line of taboo, something in me has to die, meaning something has to transform. If as a woman I want to embrace my intellect, my strength, my anger, then what has to die in me is a very internalized notion of what it means to be a woman. The same process is true for men. So how is power exercised in patriarchy? Well, now we'll look at the patriarchal pyramid. And that structure basically shows us that the power is what's on top, and that power is exercised by being over something, by dominating something. So God dominates humans, men dominate women, adults dominate children, animals dominate and are considered more valuable than plants. Plants are considered more valuable than nature, and nature's on the bottom, so nature is not considered to be alive or very valuable. So what runs from the top down to the bottom is what has the power. Central to patriarchy is something called misogyny. And misogyny is a Greek word that means hatred of woman and her body. And because woman and her body are seen in patriarchy as evil, as dark, as soulless, as mindless, then that hatred fits and it makes sense in patriarchy. How does misogyny show up in our culture? It shows up in alarming rates of violence toward women. Just a few statistics to make that point. An average of 3 women every day are murdered by their male spouses or husbands or boyfriends. Domestic violence is the leading cause of injury to women. higher than car accidents, higher than muggings and rapes. That's an alarming statistic. Women in the United States are more likely to be killed by a partner or ex-partner or family member than by any other type of perpetrator, according to the Human Rights Watch. 1 out of every 6 American women has been the victim of an attempted or completed rape in her life. And somewhere in America, right now, a woman is raped every 2 minutes. So if this program goes for a half an hour, that means that 15 women will have been raped in the United States during the time that we're talking. Popular culture has all kinds of messages to us as women that our bodies are not our own, that our bodies are suspect, and that basically our bodies are deviant because they're not a male body. Well, if that was the only source of knowledge that we had, we'd really be in bad shape. But fortunately, there are cultures that have existed longer than 6,000 years. Those are cultures that are matriarchal or matrifocal cultures. So I'd like to talk a little bit about that now in terms of what is matriarchy. Matriarchy is not, as some think, the reverse of patriarchy. In matriarchy, power is not power over. It is power that is characterized by collaboration and what Riane Eisler calls partnership. Matriarchal societies are characterized by complementary equality, where great care is taken to provide a balance both between the genders and between the generations. On the spiritual and cultural level, patriarchy understands that there is no hierarchical religion based on an omnipotent male god. In fact, in matriarchies, divinity is immanent. It's within life and within the universe. The universe is understood to be the great goddess who brought forth everything by birth, and also that the earth is Mother Nature. The earth is the source of all life. Everyone and everything is endowed with a dignity because we flow from the sacred Mother Earth. The life of human beings is understood to be a part of the interconnected web of all life. So in matriarchal cultures, women and her body were considered to be sacred. Women and men are considered to be of equal value, and their roles are distinct but of equal value. There was usually a high level of artistic expression through poetry, through pottery, through tools in matriarchal cultures. Matriarchal cultures continue to exist today in Asia, Africa, in the Americas, in Oceania, and some Native American cultures, same Native American nations like the Hopi, the Navajo, the Iroquois, and the Chickasaw also are matriarchal and matrilineal. So now, what is women's spirituality? We've talked about patriarchy, patriarchal religions, but what is women's spirituality? Well, women's spirituality is embodied spirituality. It incorporates wisdom from previous cultures, matriarchal cultures. It incorporates the understanding of goddesses. It incorporates the understanding of nature as a source of the sacred. So women's spirituality seeks to heal this internalization of the patriarchal split by transforming those disconnections of mind and body and spirit into connections with a full range of expression in all these dimensions of self, both for men and for women. Women use a variety of practices to bring forth this healing, including rituals, movement, dance, art, drumming, and so many other kinds of things. So I'd like to explore that women's spirituality, embodied spirituality, has several key themes. First of all, that woman's body is sacred, and it's the site of encounter with the sacred feminine or sacred masculine if it's a man. And what do I mean by that? I understand that the sacred feminine means the creative life force manifesting as female. So the second characteristic in embodied spirituality is that a woman's sexuality is sacred. In patriarchy, a woman's sexuality is seen as suspect. it is deviant. The word whore comes to mind. In patriarchy, woman can be one of three basically kind of models: the virgin, the mother, or the whore. But in matriarchy, a woman's sexuality is seen as sacred. A third characteristic is that a woman brings forth images of herself as the embodiment of the sacred, as she incarnates her spiritual power. So what this means is the more that a woman uses and explores and expresses her spiritual power, the more she is experienced and the more she understands herself as the embodiment of the sacred. The path of embodied spirituality is a spiral path, which involves a process of descent and ascent. In patriarchy, the path of spirituality is a linear path. It means that you start on the bottom and you're reaching for the sky. You want to walk on the ladder of spirituality to reach the heavens, to reach God, who is in the heavens. Not so in women's spirituality and embodied spirituality. Embodied spirituality, like the earth, is made up of a spiral process, so that emotions that are demonized in patriarchy, like emotions of grief or depression or sadness, are seen as part of that process of descent into the energies that are below, that are deeper within us. And by following that path and embracing the grief, anger, emotions that are demonized in patriarchy, like emotions of grief or depression or sadness, are seen as part of that process of descent into the energies that are below, that are deeper within us. And by following that path and embracing the grief, anger, sadness, I become more human. A woman experiences a greater expression of humanness for herself. And when she gathers that wisdom, then she can bring that upwards. She can bring that forth in the process of ascent, of coming from what some used to call the underworld back into the world that is above. The underworld did not equal hell. It was simply a place under the place that we live much of our life. So the women's spirituality, embodied spirituality, is a spiral path. A fifth characteristic of embodied spirituality is that it is holistic, transformative, and integrative. Patriarchal spirituality tends to be a splitting of body from spirit, a splitting of matter from spirit and body from mind, and splitting of emotions from the body. So in women's spirituality, embodied spirituality, it's about integrating and claiming all of those parts of ourselves through practices, through ritual, through daily living, and understanding that what I do in my daily life is also sacred. And finally, the last characteristic of embodied spirituality is that it embraces many ways of knowing, while giving prominence to how one knows from and through one's body. And that is also an essential way of knowing self and others, and knowing the world. Patriarchy has a privileged place for intellectual knowledge, for head knowledge. Other ways of knowing through intuition, through what my body is experiencing, are seen as demonic. They're seen as suspect. They're not seen as credible. So if I feel sick, the first place where I know the truth of that is in my body. But if I don't value that knowledge, then I'll probably go to my head and think, well, there's no reason for me to feel sick. And so I might not really address that feeling of illness until I'm actually flat on my back. Whereas in women's spirituality, embodied spirituality, that experience of dis-ease starts in my body, and I value that information, and I begin there to listen to it, and can then look for solutions that may bring me health more quickly. So in women's spirituality, we incorporate all these ways of knowing, dreams. Intuition is considered a very powerful form of knowledge that is not just part of how women know, but a part of the human spectrum of ways of knowing. Listening to one's body, listening to nature, listening to, as some native cultures say, listening to the wind, listening to the trees is not considered kind of fluffy kinds of practice, but it's that the waters, the wind, the trees are all part of me because I'm part of that interconnected web of all life. So in embodied spirituality, we are talking about parts of life that have matter. Matter is not seen as split from spirit. Matter is not seen as demonized. So some people will go to a place to practice their religion, practice their spirituality. Some may not. Some may go to a temple. Some may incorporate images of the sacred feminine. Some may not. There's a wide spectrum of what spirituality means. And spirituality basically means that I'm living my life with a full awareness and incorporating all of those parts of me that were split apart in patriarchy. How does that impact my experience of being in the world? When I embrace all of those parts of me that are wounded or hurting, it has the potential to help me grow in one of the most important characteristics of human life, and that's the characteristic of compassion, compassio. All of the great spiritual teachers from the beginning of time note that it is that characteristic and that practice of compassion that really transforms culture. So when I, as a woman, embrace all of those parts of myself and all of those expressions of human life and all those expressions of life that is four-legged, two-legged, all of that life that is in nature, then my capacity for becoming a compassionate person is enlarged greatly. And I believe that that is why the wisdom from matriarchal cultures is being investigated, is being embraced more than ever today, when we are experiencing the pollution of those elements that keep our life going, our air, our land, our waters. Right now in Oregon, we're living through the devastating fires of this summer. And by listening to nature and listening to each other in an embodied spirituality, we have the opportunity to make the world a much better place. The words of the song that I sang and words that came to me before I wrote them down, moving between the worlds, she, he, we, bring forth all things from within our bodies, is a mantra of healing, a mantra of transformation and change that we can all sing together. And as we do that, we put out a whole new energy, a vibration of peace and partnership with one another. The passion that I feel for embracing women's spirituality is a passion that moves me to action. Action on behalf of others. Action on behalf of the waters, which took me to Standing Rock, North Dakota, about a year ago. It's a passion that moves me to stand with those who are being discriminated against. It's a passion that fuels my appreciation for my daily life and the importance of how I do my tasks. It helps me understand that the song, Moving Between the Worlds, reminds me that that which I see before me has other dimensions, that these figures of other understandings of women around the globe are also within me, because that knowledge lives in my cells. There's an understanding of something that Rupert Sheldrake called resonant memory. And when I sing or move or create art, I activate that resonant memory. Just like this rattle is made of elk bone and it has deer toenails, male and female. And when I hold that in my hand, it reminds me that deep within me is a connection to that elk, to that deer, to the maker of this beautiful rattle, and that when I let myself connect with that, I feel that reconnection that reminds me that I'm not just a person of concrete that lives in buildings, but that I grew up on that 6-acre farm in Oregon, and it was a place that was sacred, that was holy, and that birthed this passion within me. So I'd like to sing that song once again, and if you're so inclined, sing it with me this time. Moving, moving, moving between the worlds. Here we go. Moving, moving, moving between the worlds. She brings forth all things from within her body. Oh, yes, she does. She brings forth all things from within her body. Men, join me. Moving, moving, moving between the worlds. Moving, moving, moving between the worlds. He brings forth all things from within his body. Oh, yes, he does. He brings forth all things from within his body. All together. Moving, moving, moving between the worlds. Moving, moving, moving between the worlds. We bring forth all things from within our bodies. Oh, yes, we do. We bring forth all things from within our bodies. I heard you loud and strong, that it echoes throughout the land as together we explore women's spirituality, all of life that is within us, around us, and through us. It's been so great to go on this journey with you today. I hope the song is one that can carry you out into the streets of wherever you live, carry you into the forests, carry you into where you buy your food and grow your food, so that together we deepen and expand this compassion for life as we move through the worlds of very trying, difficult times. I know we can transform it. We're on that path now, so strongly. Thank you for being with me today, and thank you to all the crew that worked with me in bringing this to you. Thank you to RVTV and Wanda Borland, who worked so strongly with me in creating this. Love you. Thank you very much. Sha! Wah!